Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Judge Tamika West Bernard. I'm presiding over the preliminary hearing calendar for today. I'm officially calling the state of Georgia versus Tyrone Demetrius Geer, Greer, for the first charge of aggravated assault, warrant number 2022 WA 19478. There's a second charge, warrant number 2022 WA 19479 of aggravated assault. Warrant number 2022 WA 19481 for the charge of kidnapping. Warrant number 2022 WA 19482 for the charge of false imprisonment. Warrant number 2022 WA 19483 for the charge of family violence battery. Warrant number 2022 WA 19484, cruelty to children in the third degree. Warrant number 2022 WA 19485 for a second charge of cruelty to children in the third degree. Warrant number 2022 WA 19486 for the charge of criminal damage in the second degree. That will conclude the charges against Mr. Geer. The state is represented by ADA Cheryl Freeman, and the defendant is represented by Mr. Rogers, Attorney Rogers. You ready to call your first witness, ADA Freeman?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you.
Officer Bell, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear and affirm that the testimony about to provide in the matter of state of Georgia versus Tyrone Greer will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Thank you. You can lower your hand. Please tell us your name and how you're employed.
My name is Marcus Bell. I'm employed with the City of Riverdale Police Department.
How long have you worked with the Riverdale Police Department?
About 2 years.
Were you working with the Riverdale Police Department on December 21st of 2022?
Yes, ma'am.
On that particular day, were you dispatched to 8050 Taylor Road, apartment 1708?
That's correct.
Did you respond to that location in reference to a domestic disturbance?
I'm
sorry.
The call was initially changed to a domestic. It was really, we was dispatched to a trouble unknown. It was changed to a domestic disturbance. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When you arrived at that location, tell me what happened.
We arrived to the location, myself and other supervisors, trying to make contact with the resident at the location, the victim. We was unable to make contact with her. Then my supervisor then made contact with the father of the victim, who stated that his daughter basically sent an email out, basically stating help, and called police. The mother and sister arrived on scene, and they were able to make contact with her by knocking on her front door. After that,
did you knock on the door? I'm sorry.
No, I went around. No, ma'am. The first time I did, the first time myself and Sergeant Kingston knocked on the door. First time we was unable to make contact, but the second time the mother and the sister was knocking on the door, and they made contact with her.
When the mother and you said her sister were able to make contact with her, were you standing there to hear the conversation?
No, I was downstairs.
All right, so describe to me the location, because you said you were downstairs. Were they upstairs somewhere, or describe the location?
It's a two-tier apartment complex, two-tier building. I was on the lower part. I'm basically standing by the road area.
Okay. So about how long did the mother and sister speak to the victim?
Can you repeat that again?
How long were the mother and sister, I guess, upstairs speaking to her?
There was probably about 2 or 3 minutes before I actually went up.
Okay, and so when you went up to the door, were you able to speak to her?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did she open the door?
Yes, ma'am, she did.
What did she tell you that was going on?
She said basically, Mr. Geer had basically held her against the wheel inside her residence, refusing to allow her to open her front door. I guess the only reason she was able to open the door when her mother came, because I guess the respect for her mother or something. I'm not really sure on why, but he allowed her to open the door. When he allowed her to open the door, he ran out of the back door of the residence.
What did she tell you that Mr. Greer had been doing to her?
Physically beating her, damaged her phone, held her against her will. Also had a knife, basically telling her not to say anything when police and her mother, when police were knocking on her door. I can say that.
Did she indicate whether or not, or if whether or not Mr. Greer used any objects to hit her with?
He used a porcelain piece out of the bathroom, out of the tub area, like a porcelain towel piece.
Did you see any visible injuries on the victim?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Can you describe what those injuries were that you observed?
A swollen face, well, basically forehead. You see that around her nose area, her nose area was a bit bloody. You see what she had been hit in her facial area too as well. And also observed a knot in the back of her head.
Did you call for any paramedics to come give medical treatment?
Yes, ma'am. Riverdale Fire was started to the location to assess her, but she refused to be transported to the hospital.
Was she in
Mother was
fact?
on scene from it.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
The parents were on scene, like her mother's gonna take her if she needs to go. But she did need to go, but I guess.
Okay, you were breaking up. Was she transported to the hospital?
No, ma'am.
Okay. The knife that the victim stated the defendant had, was that recovered?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
Was it placed into evidence?
Yes, ma'am.
Did the victim indicate whether or not Mr. Greer used the knife, or what did he do with the knife?
She said he had the knife, basically telling her not to say anything.
Did she say, was he holding it where she could see it? Was he swinging it? What was he doing with the knife?
She said that he was holding the knife basically down, basically saying just don't say anything.
Did the victim indicate whether or not she believed that Mr. Greer was going to use the knife on her?
Yes, ma'am.
How long did the victim indicate that Mr. Greer held her in the apartment?
She didn't really say. She just said, basically it all started earlier.
Was the victim forced to stay in one room?
Yes, ma'am.
How many rooms were in the apartment?
I believe it was a 3-bedroom.
Okay, and so while the victim and Mr. Greer were there, did she have to go into other rooms?
She said.
Excuse me, hang on a second. Yeah, I'm going to object to leading y'all.
Judge, I can rephrase it.
Yeah, I was going to say, go ahead.
Officer Bell, while the victim was there in the apartment, tell us what all did Mr. Greer make her do?
She said that Mr. Greer made her stay inside of 1 bedroom. He took her phones and stuff from her. She was only able to use the child's tablet to make contact with her father as far as the send help. But when police arrived, he made her go into another room, basically so they couldn't hear her or the kids. Go into the room right across from their room.
How many children were there during this time?
There were 2 juvenile kids.
Did the victim indicate whether or not they were in the same room while this stuff was going on?
She stated she was holding one during the initial altercation. When everything first started happening, she was holding one of the kids.
And where was the second child?
The second child was in the bed.
Were either of the children injured?
Oh no, ma'am.
The child that was in the bed, do you recall the age of that child?
No, ma'am, I do not.
Was it a newborn or a toddler?
Toddler. Both kids basically toddler.
Okay. The room where the child was sleeping, was it close to the rooms where all of the other things were happening?
Yes, ma'am. The room where the child was sleeping, that's the room that the altercation, everything basically began in.
Were the children still there when you went inside?
Yes, ma'am.
Were there any other witnesses as to what happened?
No, ma'am.
Were there any neighbors that heard anything coming from that apartment?
No, ma'am. That's my knowledge.
Were you able to recover any video surveillance regarding what happened?
No, ma'am.
Did Mr. Greer make any statements about the incident?
He didn't say anything.
You know if he made a statement to any of the other officers who were there?
I'm not sure.
Just so I'm clear, I believe you stated, did Mr. Greer run out the back door?
Yes, ma'am. The first time he ran out the back door of the resident. Then when he came, I received a call from my lieutenant around I think about 2:30, 2:50, 3 o'clock that morning, stating he was back at location. So we left blinds open in the room and cut lights on in the room so we can basically see someone actually comes to the resident. So we went back around that time doing a property check and noticed that some of the stuff inside that house had changed. So at that time, we went to the residence again to make contact, myself and two other supervisors. And then Mr. Greer attempted to run out the back door again. That's when we apprehended him, trying to jump off the top balcony.
The damage that was done inside of, as a result of the incident, did the victim give you an estimate as to how much the damage was?
No, she said she had to get in contact with leasing officer.
Can you describe to us what the damage was that you observed?
Basically a broken the bathroom area, just the porcelain, the towel rack, the shower curtain bar itself was laying down on the ground too.
So the only damage that you observed was damage to the bathroom?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that the basis for the criminal damaging charge?
That's for her cell phone, her iPhone 14.
Oh, for her iPhone, okay. Did she give you an estimate value for her iPhone?
No, she said that she had just bought it.
Okay,
So it's brand new.
okay. Did all this take place in Clayton County?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. No further questions.
Teddy Rogers, your witness.
Thank you. Let's see. Officer, I want to go back to something you were saying kind of towards the end of the direct. Did you say something about when you went back later about the furniture being rearranged or something like that? I didn't quite, like the reception got a little scratchy, so I didn't quite catch what you said.
Okay, what we did was basically we opened the blind and certain it we opened the blinds in the bedroom and cut off the bedroom light, but cut on the bathroom light. So we can actually see like if that activity does change, where someone does enter the residence from that location that way, or being inside the area of the house.
Okay. And you said so basically you turn lights on in which room you said?
In the bedroom. The bedroom light was cut off. The bathroom light was left on. So basically, you can see to a certain extent. So if somebody come home, what they'll do is they'll cut the light off and try to close the blinds or something.
Okay. So, and just so I'm clear, y'all saying y'all observed that happen at the house, or just that
Yes,
you
sir.
saw?
So we'll say it again now.
I was asking, are y'all saying that y'all observed somebody do that at the house?
No, that's all. That's all what our lieutenant did.
Okay. All right. Well, let me ask you this, and I know you just mentioned your lieutenant. So, you're not the lead officer on the case, or are you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you are the lead.
Yes, sir. As far as stuff, he just I guess you tried something since the guy didn't have the guy was possibly come back, so we just tried to open the blind just to see.
No, let me make sure. I'm not sure if you heard me correctly. What I asked just then was, on this case, are you the lead officer?
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay. And so you've had a chance to check out all the evidence known to law enforcement. Is that correct? I said you've had a chance to review the evidence that's known to law enforcement. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And when y'all initially respond the first time, how many officers show up?
3.
And this being a second floor apartment, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just explaining where this question is coming from. So it's a second floor apartment, and I think you said the second time y'all come back, y'all are able to basically establish a visual on the exits to the apartment. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And so, but the first time y'all show up, does anybody ever claim that, as far as law enforcement, ever hear anybody leave or see anybody leaving from the apartment the first time?
No, sir. No, sir. What we did was we basically stayed. We stayed at the residence, or at the residence or whatever. But we was basically in front of the residence because we was unsure. We trying to make contact to see what was actually going on. We was unsure of the actual situation.
So the first time, is it that there's nobody, I guess, is it the back side of the apartment? Is that what it is?
The back side, yes, sir.
Okay, okay. And at this point, do you, based on the fact that I haven't heard about any video or witnesses, the entire account is based on what Ms. James has explained to you all, is that correct?
Oh, yes, sir.
And at some point, she's able, you said, to use a tablet to email her father. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Does she explain how she comes to have access to the tablet while she's being, subjected to what she's allegedly being subjected to?
She didn't say.
And how does the email, have you seen the email that she's supposed to have sent to her father, or has it relayed to you?
It went to my supervisor saw that.
Okay. Does the email say like I'm at this location or this such and such is happening, or does it just say help? Do you know what it says?
He just stated, email stated help and call police.
And do you know, I guess, how much time elapsed between the email being sent and the arrival of police the first time?
I'm not sure. It could have been long because the dispatch stated the father said he had just received the email at the time of our first dispatch.
And I know you said that the kids were toddlers, but I don't want to assume. Did you speak with either one of the children?
No, sir.
Uh,
No, sir.
Did you ever ask Ms. James who struck who first?
She said Ms. James stated he hit her.
Right, I want to be very clear. I'm asking about, did she say, I understand she's alleging that he hit her. Was she ever asked if she hit him?
Oh, no, sir. I don't recall.
You don't recall if she was asked, or is that what you're saying? You don't recall whether or not she was asked?
I don't recall if I asked her that or not.
Oh, I think. And just to clean this up too, as far as how law enforcement knew where to respond to, was that wasn't conveyed in the email or anything? Like, how did y'all know where to go?
The father told us the address.
But she didn't tell him that that's where the incident was happening or anything. That's not in the email.
I don't recall that part. I just
Understand. Yeah, I understand. No, I'm really,
yeah.
I don't necessarily expect you to know, but I'm just asking to see what you do. No, that's all. It's cool.
Yeah. I'm dispatching now.
I understand. No further questions at the moment.
Okay, ADA Freeman and redirect.
No, you're on the state res.
Okay, Attorney Rice, do you have any witnesses for the defense?
No, ma'am.
Okay, ready for argument, ADA Freeman.
State waives opening.
Okay, Attorney Rogers.
Your Honor, I guess essentially what I would say is that the entire account turns on Ms. James' statement. As it sounds like, at least as far as I can tell, this is an apartment complex. Obviously, if she lives there, it's an occupied apartment complex. There's no allegation that there's any video, witnesses, any neighbors who have heard anything to even place Mr. Greer on the scene. It's unclear how this incident, if as what's being alleged, where the time to shoot an email off comes from. Additionally, there's, I guess, I would say that's the main issue, that we don't have any put Mr. Greer there, and there's somehow it's time to compose an email. That hadn't really been explained, and there's nothing to put Mr. Greer there at that time. So for those reasons, Your Honor, even though the police were allegedly on the scene while Mr. Greer was there, they don't even say that they saw him there at the time. There's no video, nobody. So for those reasons, John, I would ask that all charges be dismissed for lack of probable cause. Thank you.
Okay, ADA Freeman.
Thank you, Judge. Based on the testimony from Officer Bell, we believe that there's more than enough testimony for probable cause to bind all the charges over. He was able to speak to the victim in the case. She gave information regarding Mr. Greer assaulting her with some kind of porcelain object. He also had the knife that she was fearful of. The kidnapping, he made her move to another room. At one point, he held her in the apartment The officer observed the visible injuries to the point where they were going to call for paramedics, as well as her children that was there and the damage to her phone. The victim was able to tell the police who the person was. And so at this point in time, we believe that we have established probable cause, and we're asking all of these charges to be bound over.
Okay. Based upon the evidence and testimony presented by the parties, I do find sufficient probable cause to bind over all charges against Mr. geared to the Superior Court of Clayton County, specifically the 2 charges for aggravated assault, the charge of kidnapping, false imprisonment, battery, family violence, as well as the 2 counts of cruelty to children of 3rd degree, and then the criminal damage to property in this, criminal damage in the 2nd degree. That is the order of the court. That will conclude the preliminary hearing for hearing. I want to thank both parties for their presentation of their case.
Thank you, Judge. And may Officer Bell be excused?
Yes.
Thank you, Officer Bell. Thank you, you're excused. All right, Judge, and our last one is Copeland, and that's for Officer Willis. Officer Willis, you can turn your video on and unmute yourself.
Okay, and deputies, if you could bring forth Martez D'Angelo Copeland. Okay. Are you ready, Attorney Rogers?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm going to officially call the state of Georgia versus Martez D'Angelo Copeland. There are approximately, I believe, 20 charges pending. I'll just go through the warrant number. It's going to be warrant number 2022 WA19458 for the charge of aggravated assault. Warrant number 2022 WA19459 for the charge of aggravated assault. Warrant number 2022 WA19460 for the charge of aggravated assault. Warrant number 2022 WA19461 for the charge of aggravated assault. Warrant number 2022 WA19462 for the charge of reckless conduct. Warrant number 2022 WA19463 for the charge of reckless conduct. Warrant number 2022 WA19464 for the charge of firearm discharge near a highway. Warrant number 2022 WA19465 for the charge of battery. Warrant number 2022 WA19466 for the charge of battery. Warrant number 2022 WA19467 for the charge of cruelty to children of 1st degree. Warrant number 2022 WA19468 for the charge of cruelty to children in the 1st degree. Warrant number 2022 WA19469 for the charge of cruelty to children in the 1st degree. Warrant number 2022 WA19470 for the charge of cruelty to children in the 2nd degree. Warrant number 2022 WA19471 for the charge of cruelty to children in the 2nd degree. Warrant number 2022 WA19472 for the charge of cruelty to children in the 3rd degree. Warrant number 2022 WA19473 cruelty to children in the 3rd degree. Warrant number 2022 WA19474 cruelty to children in the 3rd degree. Warrant number 2022 WA19475 cruelty to children in the 3rd degree. Warrant number 2022 WA19476 for the charge of disorderly conduct. Warrant number 2022 WA19477 for the charge of possession of a weapon during a crime. Those are the charges pending against Mr. Copeland. The state is represented by ADA Cheryl Freeman. Mr. Copeland is represented by Attorney Rogers. Is the state ready to proceed forward with their first witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, please call your first witness.
Thank you. Officer Willis, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear and affirm that the testimony about providing the matter of state of Georgia versus Martez Copeland will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, you can lower your hand. Please tell us your name and how you're employed.
My name is Officer Francis Willis. I'm employed with Lovejoy Police Department.
How long have you worked with Lovejoy Police Department?
Approximately 3 months.
And sir, were you working with the Lovejoy Police Department on December 21st of 2022?
Yes, ma'am.
And on that particular day, did you respond to some shots fired?
Yes, ma'am. It's domestic with one shot fired.
Okay, and where did you respond?
It was, I can't recall the exact address, but it was the La Costa Trailer Park Homes.
And did you respond to a particular trailer?
Yes, ma'am.
When you arrived at that trailer, who did you speak to?
Initially, when myself, my backup officer arrived, we heard a lot of arguing walking up to the trailer. And when we got up the stairs in the porch, there's a weather door with clear glass. And we saw an altercation between Mr. Copeland, another male, with a female in between them. Mr. Copeland and the other male were engaged in physical combat, and they both were holding firearms pointed at each other.
Did you witness either of these individuals firing their firearm?
No, ma'am. But en route to the residence, dispatch did advise us that several other people were calling 911 stating they heard several gunshots.
So after seeing the two males pointing their firearms, you said there was a female in between. What did you and the other officers do?
Upon entering the residence, we gave them both commands to drop the weapons. And once they dropped both weapons, they were told to both get on the ground. Mr. Copeland, he proceeded to try to turn around, so he was assisted to the ground, at which point I went ahead and detained him in handcuffs. The other male, he did oblige and get on the ground. He was detained in handcuffs.
Who else was in the trailer at this time?
It was Mr. Copeland's baby mother, who was the female who was between him and the other male. There was her 9-year-old daughter, I believe her 17-year-old nephew, and 16-year-old son.
Did you speak to the female to see what happened?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And is this Miss Royal?
Ms. Roy, I believe so.
Is that Miss Amber Royal?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What did Miss Royal tell you what happened?
She stated she was in her bedroom. Mr. Copeland was in there, and he had walked out into the kitchen area, and she heard her 9-year-old daughter crying, and she sounded upset. And then Mr. Copeland came back into the bedroom, and he was saying, "I just need to shoot them. I just need to shoot them." And he appeared to be very, I'm sorry, hold on, phone call. Mr. Copeland, he appeared to be very inebriated, unknown on what he was. He walked in the bedroom, he grabbed a firearm, and he laid on the ground, cocking the firearm twice, and then she heard a loud pop. And after she heard the pop, she jumped up. She thought that Mr. Copeland had grabbed her firearm out of the purse, out of her purse that was sitting in the bedroom, and fired it. So she began arguing with him, asking him, where did he get the gun? Why does he have it? And he needed to put the gun down. At that point, Ms. Amber's son and nephew, they came out of the back room that they were, because they heard the pop, trying to find out what was going on. They heard the argument. And so Ms. Amber's son in the trailer, he had called his older brother and told him that Mr. Copeland was arguing with their mom. And then he called 911 and reported the shot fired. And then Ms. Amber stated that her 19-year-old son, who's the other male half engaged in the combat, arrived at the trailer. Mr. Copeland and the 19-year-old, they got into a verbal altercation, which led to outside. While they were outside, Mr. Copeland had fired off 4 more shots, and this was before myself and my backup officer had arrived. Then they went back into the house, and more threats were made. "I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you," between Mr. Copeland and the other male. And that's when they were pointing guns at each other. And that's when we walked up.
Okay. And Officer Willis, and I had asked you about Miss Amber Royal, but there's also a Bernadette Gamble, and I just want to make sure I don't get the names confused. Now, who is Miss Bernadette Gamble?
Is that Miss Brendat Gamble?
Yes.
I do not recall. I don't have access to the report.
Okay.
My county email, so.
Okay, but you have your warrants, right? For your WAA?
No, I don't have access to any of that because I'm at home right now.
Oh, okay. And the reason I asked is because I thought my legal assistant sent you an email with your WAA, so you would have it.
Yes, ma'am. And I've been trying to access the email ever since about 12 o'clock this afternoon, and it is not letting me access any emails.
Okay. So the your recollection is, when you said you don't know specifically who Miss Bernadette Gamble, and I'm just trying to make sure that we have the names correct. Do you believe Miss Amber Royal was the girlfriend to Mr. Copeland?
I believe so. It's either Amber's the girlfriend or the daughter of Mr. Copeland. There are two females in residence, that a 9-year-old child, and then the girlfriend who I initially spoke to after both males were detained.
Okay, understood. Okay. When you were there, Officer Willis, do you recall any of the parties who were there, if you saw any visible injuries on any of them?
Yes, ma'am.
And who was that, if you can recall?
It was the younger son. I believe he was 16. He had a cut on his chest from when Mr. Copeland had approached him and was arguing with him after the first shot was fired. He said that Mr. Copeland got in his face and was shoving him, and he obtained a cut. Also on the 9-year-old child, she had a very small mark on her eye where she was struck by Mr. Copeland.
Was this trailer park near a highway? I believe one of the charges is discharged near a highway.
Yes, ma'am. The closest roadway is East Lovejoy Road. Oh, I'm sorry. East Lovejoy Road.
Based on talking to the parties there, do they indicate where, I guess, Mr. Copeland fired his weapon?
They stated the first shot was in the bedroom where Mr. Copeland and his girlfriend resided. That shot was underneath the table. It was a bookshelf with the TV on top. And when he was laying on the ground sideways from what was demonstrated, he allegedly pointed the gun underneath the dresser and shot at an angle. And so when we moved the dresser, we could see a mark from a bullet going into the ground at an angle, consistent with what Mr. Copeland's girlfriend had told us.
Were you able to recover any shell casings from this incident?
We recovered 2 shell casings outside. We could not locate the shell casing in the bedroom, and there was a live round that was recovered from the kitchen living area.
The firearm that the other gentleman had it been fired at all?
No.
Did Mr. Copeland make any statements about what happened?
No, he did not.
Was there any type of video surveillance to show any of this?
There was there was a ring camera. I did not see the ring camera video. My backup officer did. I believe that's the only video that we had from the incident.
Did anyone have to be transported for medical treatment?
There was no transport, but medical was called out there.
And just to make sure I don't miss anything, because we have a lot of charges, there were 4 counts of aggravated assault.
Yes, ma'am.
Was that because there were 4 people there or different? If you could tell us the basis for the 4 charges of aggravated assault.
4 charges on aggravated assault came from Mr. Copeland when he was engaged with the 19-year-old son who arrived after being called by his brother. Mr. Copeland had pointed the gun at all 3 children while they were tussled. He had pointed the firearm at the 9-year-old, the 16-year-old, and the 17-year-old, as well as his girlfriend during that engagement.
You may have testified to this, but what type of weapon did Mr. Copeland use?
I believe it was a 9mm. I cannot remember if it was a Glock or a Taurus. I don't know the model.
Okay, but it was a handgun.
No, it was a handgun. It was a 9mm.
Okay. Were you able to obtain any written statements from any witnesses?
Yes, ma'am. All the 17-year-old, the 16-year-old, the 19-year-old, and then Mr. Copeland's girlfriend.
Did any of the neighbors make any written statements about the shots they heard or anything?
No, ma'am. We hadn't spoke to any neighbors just because of the high intensity of the incident when we arrived. There was a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of individuals, so we were focusing on that trailer at that time.
Okay. Did all this happen in Clayton County?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. No further questions.
Attorney Rogers, your witness.
Officer, it's Officer Willis, is it?
Yes, sir.
Officer Willis, I'll start at the end. One of the things you were saying in response to the question about the aggravated assaults, did you say that a firearm was pointed at people during the tussle? Is that what I heard you say?
Yes, sir.
And I guess I'm trying to get clear because when you say tussle, I think of some sort of physical struggle between the two.
Yes.
Okay. So you're saying while that's happening, he is also able to point and aim a firearm at other people?
Yes.
And who's telling you this?
This was the 16-year-old, the 17-year-old, the verbal from the 9-year-old, as well as Mr. Copeland's girlfriend. They stated he was very wild with the gun, pointing it around.
Okay. And so then, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding, this is also after the armed son of the residence has arrived. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. The 19-year-old did not live there. He lived somewhere else, but he came after his young brother called.
Right. And that's why I just want to make sure I'm clear. So these two people, these two grown men are tussling.
Yes, sir.
Both are armed.
Yes, sir.
And it's your understanding that Mr. Copeland is supposed to be pointing a pistol at, I believe, what's the other gentleman's name? Do you know his name?
I cannot recall. Like I said, I don't have a copy
Let me
of the report.
Okay, let me ask about the relationship. He is the son of the person who lives at the grown woman at the residence. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And he's also the brother of one of the people in this residence. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And it is your understanding that he's shown up at the residence, he's armed, and he watches Mr. Copeland point a pistol at his mother and brother and does not fire a shot. Is that your understanding?
Yes, sir. They were both holding. So when we walked in the house, they were both holding each other. They both had a gun on the other person, and the mom, she's in between them trying to push them away. And so during that engagement, that's when Mr. Copeland was pointing the gun at everyone in the residence.
And are we? And how? Who's saying that he is pointing it versus that it's being pushed around or wait? You know, like moved in the course of the tussle.
I'm sorry. Ask that again.
I said, who is saying that he is pointing and aiming it at people versus it just being moved along with his arms in this tussle that we're talking about? Because
the 16-year-old in the residence, the 17-year-old, the 9-year-old, and the 19-year-old, as well as Mr. Copeland's girlfriend.
And when you say Mr. Copeland's girlfriend, this is the same person that's between the two parties that are tussling?
Yes, sir.
Do you know which? So is she saying that the gun's pointed at her? She's saying that while she's in between these two people, she can see also who is being pointed at?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when you all show up, the three of them are in the doorway, is that correct?
They're about, I want to say about 6 feet past the doorway. So it's one of those weather doors that's just clear glass. And they're about 6 feet in direct. So we saw them before we even opened the door.
And do you know which direction the would-be peacemaker, do you know which direction or which person she's facing during this tussle?
So she was facing left. So her left side was towards the door. Mr. Copeland's back was towards us. And then her 19-year-old son, was facing us.
And not to belabor, but the area that they're in, is it a room or is it a hallway type place?
So to the right, there's the kitchen island. To their immediate right, there's a table, and then to the left, there's a TV. So it's like a living room that flowed into the dining room, flowed into the kitchen. There's no walls, there's no barriers between them, besides the kitchen island that's off far to the right.
And correct me if I'm wrong, you said you did recover shells, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you know the calibers?
9mm.
How many shells were recovered total?
I want to say there was 2 shells recovered outside on the patio. And then there was 1 live round that was recovered directly inside the residence on the floor.
So including the live round, all of these are 9mm?
All 9mm, yes, sir.
Do you know what type of firearm the armed son had?
It may have been a Glock. I do not recall.
Nobody determined where the other one.
They were both handguns. They were both 9mm.
So at the point that we're saying only one person fired shots, that's just based on the witness accounts?
On all witness and victim accounts, yes, sir.
But the actual physical evidence says that one or both could have fired shots as far as a 9mm.
As far as what I was told, only Mr. Copeland.
Right, I'm asking about the physical evidence, not what you were told. I'm asking as far as the physical evidence that everybody can see and touch, like the shell casings and things like that. None of that rules out the possibility that both parties fired shots.
I would say no, it doesn't. But Mr. Copeland is the only one that fired his shots. Even when the 19-year-old son came in, he stated he didn't pull his gun out until he was in the residence. And Mr. Copeland's the only one that fired in the bedroom and fired outside.
And again, you said this is all based on, like I said, this isn't video. This is just based on
This
witness
is
account.
testimonial evidence.
And was there any sort of testing as far as any kind of gunshot residue or anything regarding the son firing a shot?
Not on scene. That would be taken up with CID.
No further questions at this time.
Okay, ADA Freeman.
No additional questions, Judge. The state rests.
Okay, Attorney Rogers, do you have any witness for the defense?
No, man, I just argument.
Okay. Ready for closings?
Yes, Judge. The state waives opening.
Okay, Attorney Rogers.
Yes, ma'am. One moment, I just want to make
Okay.
sure charges in front of me. But as it relates to the aggravated assault, Sean, I'll start with those charges. The aggravated assault. It's not, thus far, I'm aware of what the allegation is, but we're not here to just say, oh, somebody said Mr. Copeland did X, Y, and Z, so that's it. It's not been made clear to me how this Mr. Copeland is supposed to allegedly be tussling with two people or tussling with one person, with another person trying to intervene, but somehow he's still able to aim at 2 to 3 other people at the same time. And one of the people involved in the tussle is somehow able to know that he is aiming at these specific people while trying to break up the tussle. This is a lot. That's a lot. So I would say at this point, actually, some sort of independent evidence of that's asking a lot, for one. For two, the idea that it's being pointed as in aimed versus being waved or pushed around in the middle of a tussle, that's two different things. And it's not clear, why we're jumping to that or how that even really makes a lot of sense that a person who is armed and has come to this place armed to confront someone, then sits there and watches this person point a pistol at their loved ones and does not fire a shot. That's a lot to think that you think that this person is pointing this pistol at them in such a manner that they're going to shoot that person possibly. And you're armed and you don't fire a shot. So I would say that the what happened and what the evidence shows are not necessarily always the same thing, or what's being testified to, I should say, are not always the same thing. Specifically, I would say that the reckless conduct, I guess, I would entertain one of those based on the allegation of what happened in the bedroom and the shot fired. But as it relates to the firearm discharge near a highway, there was no testimony regarding the distance to this nearest road. We're talking about a trailer park. In my experience, usually there's a driveway of some sort that takes you into the trailer park that's a private road. So we're not necessarily on any kind of public road or anything like that to start with. And again, there was no testimony about the distance of the nearest road. So firearm discharge near a highway, I would say, is unsupported as it stands. Additionally, any charges based on this, the idea that Mr. Copeland is the one firing the shots, when both people have knives and nobody even bothered to find out if the other person, may have fired it. They didn't even look to see. We don't know if he's been tested for residue. We're just assuming that based on this family's version against Mr. Copeland, that's what happened. But either one of them could have fired. They're both armed. They both have knives. So the fact that there's 9mm shell cases on the ground doesn't necessarily say that Mr. Copeland is the one firing shots. If they were different weapons, one was a 9 and one was a 40 cal, we might be able to get to that point. but that's not the situation we have here. Additionally, no testimony really. To my recollection, I believe there was one mention of a 9-year-old. There was some discussion of teenagers, but 18 is a teenager. It don't make you a child under the eyes of the law. So the cruelty to children charges are unsupported, except as it relates to the one mention of a 9-year-old, possibly. So I'd ask that all the cruelty to children charges be dismissed outside of possibly one, based on the allegation. With that being said, I would say that the same arguments that I made as it relates to the aggravated assault apply to the possession of a weapon during the commission of crime, and that if we're not clear that he's pointing and aiming guns at people, versus just being moved around in a tussle, we don't have an aggravated assault, and so we don't have possession during the crime. For all those reasons, John, I would ask that all the aggravated assaults, all the cruelty to children, possession of a firearm during the commission of a crime, discharging a firearm near a highway, all the reckless conduct, the second reckless conduct at least, I'm not even sure what the basis of that one is supposed to be. So for those reasons, I would ask that all those charges be dismissed, for lack of probable cause. Thank you.
Judge, we heard a lot of testimony. We have a lot of charges here. The ag assaults, I think we heard sufficient testimony for all those charges to be bound over. Now, I specifically asked Officer Willis about if there were any statements regarding the other male firing, and I believe he testified that that nobody indicated that the other male fired. So at this point, at this stage, for probable cause, I think it is enough to bind over the charges regarding Mr. Copeland, and given that he was the only one that the witnesses indicated who fired a weapon. The testimony also indicated from the girlfriend of Ms. Copeland about Mr. Copeland firing the gun. Officer Willis testified as to visible injuries that he saw when he arrived there. He testified as to the highway that was closed by. Now, the cruelty to children, and Judge, my recollection is, like I said, I know we heard a lot of testimony. I remember a 9-year-old. I thought there was also a 16-year-old and then a 17-year-old. It seems like what I heard. And if that is the case for the cruelty to children, and I have to double check is whether or not I know a 17-year-old would be considered. I know in the state of Georgia, 17 is considered an adult, but for cruelty to children charge, I'm not sure if that 17-year-old would fall under that, but certainly the 9-year-old and the 16-year-old. But certainly Attorney Rogers may be correct regarding that 17-year-old. And that was the testimony I heard, Judge. Wait a second. And outside of that, Judge, the testimony that the officer gave, regarding it was a handgun that was used. They were able to recover it, place it into evidence. And so we're asking that these charges are bound over to Superior Court.
Okay. And based upon the evidence presented by the evidence and testimony presented by the parties, I do find sufficient probable cause to bind over all charges against Mr. Copeland to the Superior Court of Clayton County. I know there's been various testimony about the age of the juveniles. I believe at this stage, the probable cause stage, I'm not prepared to dismiss those. I do believe I did hear sufficient testimony.
And Judge, I will say, the statute does say under 18.
Okay, yes, that's what I thought, yeah.
Yes.
I do believe I definitely heard that there was a 16-year-old, and I know, and other juveniles, that was there. I know there was a 19-year-old, obviously, I don't believe that he was charged, there was a charge for the 19-year-old. So I'm gonna find sufficient cause to bind over all charges, specifically 4 counts of the aggravated assault charge, 2, I believe it was 2 counts of the reckless conduct charge. There was a charge for firearm discharge near a highway. Also, there were 2 battery charges that I believe sufficient based on the evidence that will be binded over. There will be the cruelty to children charge in the 1st degree, that being 3 charges for the 3 juveniles. And then cruelty to children in the 2nd degree, that will be 2 counts. And then based on the evidence, there will be 4 counts of the cruelty to children in the 3rd degree. And then the remaining charge of disorderly conduct will be bounded over, as well as the weapons, being in possession of a weapon during a crime. So I believe I have bounded over all charges. My order will reflect that. That will conclude the hearing for Mr. Copeland today. And I want to thank both parties for their presentation of their case. Thank you.
Judge. And may Officer Willis be excused?
Yes.
Thank you all